The warm spring sunshine is soon going to be replaced over the weekend by something slightly cooler and a little bit more unsettled. But if you're not a fan, we have high pressure building next week. But does that mean it's going to be warm and sunny? Well, firstly, let's take a look at the bigger picture, and we can see a ridge of high pressure here on Wednesday, and that's brought quite a pleasant afternoon for many of us, enjoying that warm weather and the sunshine, particularly across parts of the south and southeast. This soon being replaced though by cloud outbreaks of rain across the far northwest to start with, so starting off that more unsettled spell of weather towards the end of the week. But it should be said that across into Thursday, many central and southern parts should see once again another fine start to the day, once again some mist and fog to start, and then we see something more widespread and unsettled as this cold front edges its way towards the southeast, and it may linger here for a time on Friday, bringing quite a damp start across East Anglia and parts of southeast England. Not only this, but it drags in some slightly colder air. Now, it's not going to be particularly chilly, but it is going to feel much cooler than it has done of late. But once again, another ridge of high pressure building, but low pressure once again never too far away, just in time for the weekend. Before we get onto that though, let's take a look at some of the details for tomorrow. So with clear skies overnight, we tend to see mist and fog, particularly during this time of year, but it does tend to ease away quite quickly through the course of the morning, so a chance we could see this across central and southern parts. Turning brighter through the course of the morning, but very different story across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. More cloud here, some outbreaks of rain, so a very wet start, and it persists all the way into the afternoon. Some quite heavy outbreaks at times too, and fairly blustery, particularly around exposed coasts and under those cloudier skies. But central areas, particularly across the south and southeast, seeing once again plenty of sunny spells and highs of 17 to 18 degrees Celsius, so feeling pleasant once again. Then we start to see a change into something slightly more unsettled. It starts off into the evening as we start to see this cold front drift its way southeastwards, turning more widespread across the country, dragging in that slightly cooler air. And notice a few more isobars on the chart too, so starting to turn a bit more breezier as we head into Friday. So that's when we'll begin to start to see a little bit of a change. Now, as I've already mentioned, this cold front might just linger for a time across parts of East Anglia, Sussex and Kent, for example. So a damp start here. Elsewhere, a little bit brighter, but it's not going to be totally dry. Still plenty of showers moving their way in from the west. And as we saw that colder air moving in, some of these showers could actually bring a little bit of snow, particularly across western parts of Scotland, but this once again mainly across hilly areas. Some quite heavy showers at times too, perhaps hail, the odd rumble of thunder, particularly around coasts of Scotland. And it's still going to be fairly blustery too, so it's not going to be particularly pleasant, but we will see some sunny spells in between those showers. And elsewhere, northern parts of England, central parts of Wales and the southwest, still a bright day ahead. It is going to be feeling cooler though, and still can't rule out some showers, particularly around western areas. But notice that drop in temperatures, highs this time only reaching around 13 degrees Celsius, so feeling a little bit cooler and a bit fresher, and it's not going to be totally dry either. Then how about as we head into the weekend? We'll eventually say goodbye to that cold front, and we'll see once again another ridge of high pressure building for a short time. And then we need to keep our eyes on the jet stream. Now what it does as we head into Saturday, we have an area of low pressure to the north. This is the global model that we use at the Met Office, and what it does is moves in this area of low pressure towards the cold side of the jet. And what this can mean is that it undergoes rapid deepening as we see more divergence aloft, so more airlifting, and that could mean some slightly stronger winds across parts of the north and some heavy outbreaks of rain. But actually it's not quite the preferred solution. We have other models such as our European model or American model that actually has the jet stream slightly shifted further north, so it doesn't move this area of low pressure into that colder air mass, so it doesn't undergo any kind of rapid deepening, and that means the winds won't be as strong and the rain won't be as heavy. So at the moment this is a little bit of an outlier. Nevertheless though, there is a chance of seeing some outbreaks of rain, some breezy weather across the north, but across the southeast, once again a fairly settled day until we see some rain and some showers later into the day. But notice that jet stream still stays to the north of the country, and this allows high pressure to build in as we head into next week. I just want to rewind the clock for a little bit just to say that yes, there is a chance of seeing some wet and windy weather, mainly in western parts, but this feature is a largely weakening feature as it moves southeast. So for many across central and southeastern areas on Saturday, a largely fine day, some showers following on behind, at least for the beginning of Sunday, but then once again that ridge of high pressure building, and that's going to kill off any showers, at least until we finish off the weekend on Sunday. Now, then we want to focus on that area of high pressure, don't we? That's going to build into next week, and there's a fairly good signal over the next couple of weeks or so that we are going to see that high pressure stick around all the way through into the beginning of April. Now, if we just take a look at some of the detail, at first it does look like the red colours, so high pressure dominating across the UK. But if we look at some of the numbers, particularly for kind of the latest model run, which we find at the top here, and as we move our way further down, these are earlier model runs. And what we notice is that earlier on, perhaps yesterday, we saw some quite high percentages for that high pressure dominating across the UK. But the latest model runs, the percentages aren't quite as high, and that's just indicating perhaps some different flavours of high pressure. So perhaps not high pressure, clear skies, warm and sunny, but perhaps something slightly different. And it all really depends on whereabouts that high pressure is going to sit. This is shown quite nicely in the probability plot. So yes, as we head into the first week of April, lots of the red colours, so once again, high pressure dominating. But you can see by the different kind of red that we get is the different kind of high pressure. So a chance it could be to the north or perhaps more to the south with an Azores high extension across the UK. And this does have a big impact on the kind of weather we can expect and the kind of temperatures we can expect too. So as we head into the middle part of next week on Wednesday, it could look something like this. High pressure situated to the east, still bringing us a southerly flow of air, so temperatures around average if not above. So once again, likely that we'll see some warm sunny spells as we head into next week and that high pressure begins to dominate more and more. But as you know, here at the Met Office, we don't just look at one model and we don't just look at one model run. For example, our MOGREPS global model that we use, that's run over 30 times here at the Met Office, and we change those initial conditions and then we tweak what we could see at the beginning, and that gives us slightly different outcomes as we move forward in time. Now, what we notice, taking a look at all the different members of this model, is that most of the time they agree, and we do actually have high pressure situated to the east, giving us that warm southerly flow. But there's a couple of outliers that have that high pressure just situated slightly further to the southeast, and that allows low pressure more to the northwest. So once again, there's a chance that we could see something a little bit wet, a little bit windy, particularly across parts of the northwest. But still a fairly similar situation as to what we could see over the next couple of days. Central and southern areas still seeing fine and dry conditions, but these are the only two members really that indicate that kind of direction, and they're not really the preferred solution, and most of the time we see that high pressure still situated out to the east. Now, towards the end of the week, once again, it's likely that that high pressure will shift slightly, so moving perhaps slightly further northeastwards. And what we could find with this is that still temperatures widely above average, so still feeling mild for the time of year, but it's likely that the driest of the conditions, if we see a bit more of an easterly component to that wind, the drier conditions will be slightly more to the west. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be particularly wet across the east, but what we do find at this time of year with that easterly flow brings in some moisture from the North Sea, so we can get a little bit of low cloud moving into the eastern areas, some sea fret or some har, and we have had situations where that can stick around through much of the day, and with more cloud around, that means things aren't going to get quite as warm and you're not going to see as much sunshine in these areas as well. The only difference at the moment is that if we take a look at the sea surface temperature anomaly, so the temperatures compared to average across the ocean, so the redder colours showing above average, whereas the blue colours showing below average, what we see across the North Sea is actually sea surface temperatures are quite warm for the time of year. Now, what that means is if we do start to see any moisture being dragged up across North Sea coasts, yes, it could bring in a little bit of sea fog, some low cloud to these areas, but because the seas are slightly warmer, that shifts and decreases the temperature difference between the land and the sea. So although we could see some low cloud moving through, it's likely to be a bit patchier, perhaps not lingering around those North Sea coasts as much. So we may see it in the morning and then that warm spring sunshine warm enough to burn it back. But nevertheless, there is still a chance that we could see a little bit of that, particularly if that high pressure is situated to the northeast. Now, more on temperatures. As I've already mentioned, it is going to be turning that little bit cooler over the weekend with the more unsettled conditions. But as that high pressure builds into next week, we can take a look at what the temperatures are going to be doing. So once again, obviously still very dependent on whereabouts that high pressure is going to sit. But it is largely agreed across the models that we'll have high pressure at some point situated across the UK. And with that, we could see some quite warm temperatures, even though as we move further in time, we can see these boxes getting bigger, so the spread of potential temperatures getting larger. But even though the spread is quite big, for example, in northern areas, they're still mostly above this red line, which is the climatological average for the time of year. So even though there is more spread as we move further into the future for both northern and southern parts, which is what we would expect, it is still mainly above that red line, so it's still likely to remain mild, and it's not looking like we're going to see any more cold spells on the horizon. So slightly unsettled over the weekend, high pressure building next week, but it looks like it should be staying mild and still some sunny spells in places. And of course, for more updates day to day, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Bye bye.